then check this out.
A bit of a 40,000-foot question here. The president's got so much focus on climate change. He talks about it all the time, and you had the IRA and so on. How does he assess the broader acceptance of U.S. society to getting on with all the changes to daily life that a lot of the experts who talk about climate crisis say should be happening? You know, things that really get into every individual's life. Because compared to Europe, for example, in Europe there's a lot more, let's say, grassroots type of participation in recycling and energy saving and driving little tiny cars and being told to bicycle instead of driving and being told to take a train instead of a plane. I mean, this is like, I have a reliable source tells me that in France, when you go at a holiday camp, there was signs saying you couldn't have showers for more than 2 minutes. I just don't know if that would work here. Does the president feel American society is on board with that level of a push that some parts of the world are?
Okay. Here's what I'll say. I'll say what the president believes and how he's taken this climate change crisis very seriously. Since he walked in day one in this administration, as I've laid out many times before, he's done more to move forward on dealing with climate crisis than any other president. He's had an ambitious policy. You just mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the most investment that we have seen from any president as it deals with a piece of legislation that is now law to deal with a real issue.
Here we go.
And let's not forget, he rejoined the Paris Agreement. He rallied more than 100 countries to join the global methane pledge to reduce methane emissions. So he's been a leader as well globally on this issue, and he's going to continue to do that. I mean, he just talked about, as you mentioned, the extreme heat and how climate is very real. Climate change is very real, and how we have to take serious steps to continue to deal with this issue. Look what's going on across the country. And so, it is an issue that he takes very seriously. It is an issue that we see, if you look at polling, that Americans are taking very seriously, especially young people. And so, look, the president's going to continue to be a leader. I can't speak to every American here, but I can speak to what the president is going to continue to do. You talked about small cars, right? When you think about electric vehicles and what the president is going to be able to do with the bipartisan infrastructure law and also the Inflation Reduction Act on electric vehicles across the country, making sure that it's available to people at a discounted rate, right? Making sure that it is the wave of the future. And so he's making investments there. So this is an important issue. We see climate change, especially this summer, as it relates to extreme weather. And so we're going to continue to move forward in dealing with climate change.
There's more.
Thanks, Karine. Just to follow up on Sebastian's question. So, today's measures were aimed at explicitly helping Americans to adapt to extreme heat and mitigate the harm it causes. I guess another way to ask is, should Americans expect this to be the new normal?
Hey, that's pretty good.
In terms of,
I mean, I'm not an expert in climate change, so I can't speak to it, what it's going to look like. But we know climate change exists, right? We know that there is a real problem here. And we know the president understands that we have to be ambitious with our policies as we move forward as a country and globally. I just listed out how the president has been a leader globally on this issue. So look, climate change is a problem. It's here. How bad it's going to get, that is for experts to speak to, but we know that we have to do everything that we can. The president wants to be aggressive here in dealing with this issue. Yes, he announced three important ways to deal with the extreme heat that we're seeing this summer, because he understands that Americans are suffering. Americans are dealing with this issue, tens of millions of Americans across the country. So as president, he put forth 4 real key ways for us to deal with that on the federal level. But of course, the Inflation Reduction Act is going to bring resources forward to make sure that we also deal with this issue. How do we move forward as climate change is taking over every part of our lives almost?
Is there any update on the summit with Japan and South Korea?
I don't have any updates for you at this time.
Just a question about Niger. The U.S. Embassy has received reports about the borders and airports currently being closed, and commercial flights to and from Niamey have apparently been suspended until August 5th. One, has the White House confirmed this? And two, does this hamper future rescue or evacuation efforts in the short term?
So look, just a couple of things on that. We understand what happened earlier today. The Nigerian foreign minister stated that he was the interim head of government. The President Bazoum was still the legitimate president, and that negotiations were still ongoing. And so that's important to note. The situation remains fluid. It is too soon to characterize the nature of ongoing developments. We are monitoring the situation closely and are in communication with the U.S. Embassy there. We strongly support the democratically elected president, and we condemn in the strongest terms any effort to seize power by force and disrupt the constitutional order. We call for the immediate release of the president and respect for the rule of law and public safety. And so we echo the strong condemnation of yesterday's action by Economic Community of West African States and other regional and international organizations. We are monitoring the situation closely, and we are in communication with the U.S. Embassy. And so as I just mentioned earlier, we have put out an alert to the via the U.S. Embassy. They released a security alert on all Americans who are there and how they should move forward. And so we'll continue to keep a close eye on what's going on there.
Okay. One more question. How does this administration reassure Americans who worry about the health of leaders in Congress and here at the White House because of their advanced age?
I'm not going to speak to leaders in Congress about age or about anything like that. That is for them to speak to. So what is your question exactly?
Kidding me? Are you kidding?
Answer me now.
How can the administration reassure Americans who are worrying about these leaders, like I said, in Congress and here at the White House?
So is your question about Congress, or is your question about leaders here? Well, I'm not going to speak to leaders in Congress.
Here at the White House?
What about your leader, the leader of Congress?
A way that this administration is reassuring Americans who have these concerns.
Look, we've been asked this question multiple times, and you have a president who, I just went through his unity agenda, what we've been able to do in a bipartisan way as it relates to issues that really matter to the American people, right? The cancer moonshot, which is actually going to make a difference with people and Americans who have family members dealing with cancer. That is something that this president has been able to do. You look at the record that he's been able to lay out when you think about the economy right now, the GDP. We just laid out the good news from the GDP and how the economy is growing. This is a president who has done historic amount of policies, of changes in this administration that has mattered to the American people. And so that's what the president's going to continue to focus on. You know, since 2019, the age comment has been out there. And what has this president done? He beat Republicans in 2020. He beat Republicans in 2022. Leading with the message that American people actually cared about when you think about lowering costs, when you think about getting the economy back on its feet. That's something that this president has been able to do. And so if you look at the work that he's done, if you look at the historic amount of, changes that he's been able to make, 13.5 million jobs created under this president, unemployment at under 4%, wages are up, inflation is moderating. That's what we care about. If we are continuing to deliver for the American people in a way that truly, truly matters.
Whew. Now I feel better.